For decades, people have repeated the same sentence as if it were a universal truth. Renting is throwing money away. It's often tied to the image of the American dream, where owning a home represents stability, success, and adulthood. But when you slow down and actually run the numbers, the story becomes far more complicated. Imagine two people starting the same year. One buys a $400,000 home. The other rents a similar place for $2,500 per month. Most people instinctively assume the homeowner is building wealth while the renter is falling behind. But the real comparison is not as simple as rent versus mortgage. There is a phrase that experienced investors often repeat: rent is the maximum you will pay for housing. A mortgage is the minimum. When you rent, the number on the lease is usually the full cost of your housing for the month. But when you own, the mortgage payment is just the beginning. The homeowner still has property taxes to pay every year. They need homeowners insurance to protect the property. The roof will eventually need replacement. The air conditioner will fail. Pipes will break. The lawn needs care. Over time, every house quietly demands more money. In the real world, home ownership comes with what financial analysts call unrecoverable costs. These are expenses you will never get back, even if your house increases in value. And when you start to add them up, they can change the entire equation. Let's break it down using a simple whiteboard approach. A renter paying $2,500 per month is spending $30,000 per year. That money is gone forever. There is no equity built, no ownership stake, and no future sale. On the surface, this is why renting gets labeled as wasteful. But owning a home has its own version of money that disappears. Property taxes alone can easily reach 1% of the home's value every year. On a $400,000 house, that is about $4,000 annually. Homeowners insurance might add another $1,500 each year. Then there is maintenance. A common guideline among financial planners is the 1% rule. This means you should expect to spend roughly 1% of the home's value each year on repairs and upkeep. For that same $400,000 house, that is another $4,000 annually. Now we come to the largest hidden cost of all: mortgage interest. In the early years of a 30-year mortgage, the majority of your payment is not building equity. It is going straight to the bank as interest. If someone buys that $400,000 home with a 20% down payment, they might borrow $320,000. In the first several years of the loan, most of their monthly payment goes toward interest rather than principal. That interest is also money that never comes back. When you combine property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and mortgage interest, something surprising happens. During the first 5 to 7 years of owning a home, the unrecoverable costs of ownership can often match or even exceed the cost of renting. In other words, both renters and homeowners are losing money every month. They're just losing it in different ways. Renters lose it in rent. Homeowners lose it in interest, taxes, and upkeep. This realization leads to one of the most important questions in personal finance. If buying a home requires a large down payment, what else could that money have been doing? Let's go back to the example of the $400,000 house. A typical 20% down payment would be $80,000. Most buyers view that money as the price of entry into home ownership. But from a financial perspective, that money also has an opportunity cost. Opportunity cost simply means what you give up when you choose one option instead of another. In this case, the alternative investment could be the stock market. Historically, the S&P 500 has produced an average return of around 7 to 10% per year after inflation over long periods of time. While no investment is guaranteed, the market has historically rewarded patience and long-term investing. If that $80,000 down payment were invested and earned an average return of 8% per year, something interesting happens over a decade. Through the power of compounding, that investment could grow to roughly $172,000 in 10 years. Meanwhile, the homeowner's wealth is building through a different mechanism. Instead of market compounding, their wealth grows through home equity and property appreciation. Real estate often benefits from leverage. When someone buys a $400,000 home with an $80,000 down payment, they control the entire asset, even though they only invested a fraction of the price. If the home increases in value by 3% per year, the property could be worth around $537,000 after 10 years. That appreciation benefits the homeowner because they control the full asset, not just their original investment. At the same time, every mortgage payment slowly reduces the loan balance. Part of each payment goes toward principal, gradually increasing the homeowner's equity in the property. So the real comparison becomes more nuanced. The renter potentially builds wealth through market investments. The homeowner builds wealth through leveraged appreciation and principal paydown. But before we go further, if you enjoy clear breakdowns like this that simplify complicated money decisions, take a moment to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the real mathematics behind everyday financial choices. But money is only one part of the story. Housing decisions also shape the way people live their lives. Renting offers something that homeownership often cannot: mobility. A renter can usually relocate with relatively little friction once the lease ends. This flexibility can be extremely valuable early in a career. Imagine a young professional who receives a job offer in another city with a 20% salary increase. For a renter, accepting that opportunity might simply mean moving at the end of the lease. For a homeowner, the situation is very different. Selling a property takes time, involves transaction costs, and depends heavily on local market conditions. Real estate commissions alone can consume 5 to 6% of the home's value. This creates what some economists call a career tax. Being tied to a property can limit mobility and make it harder to pursue new opportunities in different cities or industries. Renting, in this sense, can be viewed as purchasing flexibility. Instead of committing to a specific location for decades, renters retain the freedom to adapt to new circumstances. Of course, there is a powerful counter-argument that supporters of homeownership often raise. Most people don't consistently invest the money they save while renting. In theory, renters could take the difference between rent and ownership costs and invest it every month. But in practice, many people simply spend that extra money on lifestyle upgrades. This is where homeownership introduces a psychological advantage. A mortgage functions like a forced savings plan. Each payment gradually builds equity, whether the homeowner thinks about it or not. Over time, this automatic wealth building can become significant. After 20 or 30 years, a homeowner may fully own their property, eliminating a major monthly expense. Real estate also tends to act as a long-term hedge against inflation. As prices rise across the economy, property values and rents often rise as well, which can benefit homeowners who locked in their housing costs years earlier. But even with these advantages, timing still matters. One of the most widely accepted guidelines in housing economics is the 5-year rule. This rule is based on the idea that buying a home involves high transaction costs. Closing costs, inspections, agent commissions, and moving expenses can add up quickly. If someone buys a home and sells it within just a few years, these costs can erase much of the financial benefit of ownership. The early years of a mortgage also involve the highest interest payments, which further reduces the financial advantage. Because of this, buying tends to make more financial sense when someone expects to stay in the same location for a longer period of time. If you plan to stay somewhere for less than 5 years, renting often wins mathematically. The flexibility and lower transaction costs can outweigh the benefits of ownership. If you expect to stay for 10 years or more, the equation often begins to favor buying. Over longer time horizons, appreciation, equity buildup, and inflation protection can tilt the numbers toward home ownership. But even within, the final decision is rarely purely mathematical. Housing is both an asset and a lifestyle choice. A home is not just an investment, it is the place where you wake up in the morning,
cook dinner, build routines, and create memories with the people around you. For some people, stability and ownership provide a deep sense of security and belonging. For others, flexibility and freedom are more valuable than a deed with their name on it. So instead of repeating the old cliché that renting is throwing money away, it may be more helpful to ask a different question. Are you looking for an investment, or are you looking for a home? And if this breakdown helped you see the renting versus buying debate in a clearer way, make sure you like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the real mathematics behind everyday financial choices.